Welcome to SuperCrowdChicago, live in person at Columbia College Chicago and streaming live internationally on the E360 TV network and across social media.
I'm excited now to introduce our next speaker. I had the opportunity to get to know Dilla in Israel. He and I were both invited by the ministry, the foreign ministry in Israel, to visit as influencers, perhaps is the word, creators. Dilla is famous here in Chicago. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard of him because of his work in telling the story of Chicago's history. Often called the dopest historian in Chicago, maybe the dopest historian in the world. We are thrilled. You know, he's got tens of thousands of social media followers, well over 100,000. He's a lifelong resident of Chicago's Auburn Gresham neighborhood. And Dilla balances his roles as a ComEd employee and as the father of 7, sharing the rich history of Chicago through his unique lens. So, Dilla, welcome. We're thrilled to have you here today.
Evan's way too kind, way too generous with his words, but he was amazing person to travel with. Very honored to get to know Devin. So my name is Dilla. I'm a Chicago historian, born and raised in this amazing city. I'm the son of a Chicago cop, son of a mom who was a nurse, very proud husband and dad. And I'm here with you today partially because of the power of crowdfunding. One of the things that I was able to do through crowdfunding was get a bus. There was a need, I thought, to highlight Chicago in a way that's not typical to tourism. If you land at Midway Airport or if you land at O'Hare Airport, at best, you're going to be told to go downtown. Maybe you'll be told to go to Rogers Park. We miss out on all the other neighborhoods. As a historian, I'm a person who studies and has come to realize that everything dope about this country finds its origins in one way or another from Chicago. Chicago is the reason why the Western expansion worked so well. It's our proximity to Lake Michigan and Lake Michigan's proximity to the Chicago River that opened up the Mississippi River trade on the East Coast. Formerly, if you were a business owner trying to do business, say in Louisiana, you'd have to take the Atlantic all the way around. And we all remember the cartoons about the Bermuda Triangle, right? So that was no fun to get through. And then the water changes when you get to the Gulf of Mexico. A lot of goods were lost, and it took a lot of time. Chicago becomes a city. You cut that time almost in half because you take the Erie Canal to the Great Lakes, hit Lake Michigan. You take Lake Michigan to the Chicago River, and we take you right across to the Mississippi River. Now you have access to the entirety of the middle of the country. It's crowdsourcing in Chicago that helped create an organization called the NAACP. A lot of people will credit W.E.B. Du Bois as the founder of the NAACP. But you know how if your wife comes up with something cool, then you go back to work and now it's your idea? That's what happened with W.E.B. Du Bois. A Chicagoan by the name of Ida B. Wells, was a pioneering data journalist. She came up with the concept of the NAACP, just gone on to do crowdsourcing to raise the legal funds for some of the most trying and infamous things that have occurred in our country, including helping a lady by the name of Baby Till, whose son Emmett Till's life and death starts the modern civil rights era for our country. It was crowdsourcing in Chicago by a gentleman by the name of Julius Rosenwald, who was the one-time owner of the Sears Roebuck Company, that gives us the concept of Black history, because his crowdsourcing, working with the community, gave us a YMCA that's still standing today on 37th and Wabash. That YMCA is the birthplace of Black History Month for our country. Chicago's crowdsourcing allowed a lady by the name of Jane Addams to come up with one of the first kind of social work cohorts for our nation. She invented juvenile courts, not to try kids, ask kids for crimes, to give kids a space to advocate, because in the days of child labor, boss would promise them one wage. When payday came, not pay them at all because they were young. It was crowdsourcing and community engagement in Chicago that ended that, not just for Chicago or our nation. It was crowdsourcing that allowed a lady by the name of Mahalia Jackson to partner with a gentleman by the name of Thomas Dorsey to invent this thing that we call gospel music. And that's just some of the amazing things that can be found here in Chicago when you visit our neighborhoods. Today, I want to take you all on if you're so lucky, I'm going to take you all on a Black History tour, particularly because it's June and we're very close to Juneteenth. And I want to take you by a place called Providence Hospital. The community crowdsourced on the south side of Chicago to create the first ever privately owned Black hospital in this nation's history. In that building in 1893, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Daniel Hill Williams performed the world's first on-record successful open heart surgery. It was crowdsourcing here in Chicago that allowed Asian American lady by the name of Dr. Margaret Hyding Lin. She's the first woman ever to be accepted into the International College of Surgeons. And because the Asian Americans living in Chinatown at the time wasn't treated very nicely when they went to community hospitals, they wouldn't go. So a lot of them started to have their children at home. But then if an emergency happens and you're at home, there's not a lot of time for medical procedures to intervene in order to save the child's life. She crowdsourced across Chicago and created one of the first healthcare facilities in Chinatown that's still around today. It was crowdsourcing here in Chicago that allowed a gentleman by the name of Carlos Torreno to come up with America's first accredited Mexican-American art museum. While you're here in Chicago, I hope you visit the National Museum of Mexican-American Art. It's in Pilsen. It's in an amazing neighborhood. All these things are a combination of business and community. I just wanted to make some money, but wanted to make some money and an impact. Because I'm sure you all know in your various industries that when people feel healthy, people feel safe, people feel seen, they will spend a lot of money, right? And if you're on the other end of that, then you benefit. And you're able to put that money back into spaces to make people feel more seen, feel more healthy, feel more involved. And when that occurs, we all win. So as a historian, those are the stories I get to tell. Been very honored. Devin was there when I was asked to tell the story of the Black liberators of Yad Vashem, which is the International Holocaust Museum. I've been honored to tell the story of Second City, which is America's first improv theater. I got to tell that story in Amsterdam. Every now and again, when my kids are having a bad grade, they tell the teacher, hey, my dad could come in and tell some extra lessons for some extra points. And I'm proud of that too. I'm proud that they want me to tell those stories. Proud to tell the story of how Chicago is the place that's responsible for the first African-American president in our country's history. And he got that opportunity by helping people. It was a crowdsourcing activation in an area called Argyle Gardens. They were trying to advocate for themselves to remove asbestos, other things from their living conditions. They needed a lawyer. The community came together and they were able to raise funds. Some folks were promised returns on their investments after they sued the city to get that asbestos removed from that place. That bit of community activism started by crowdfunding ended up one of the coolest dudes to ever sit in the Oval Office, right? That's the power of what you all do. You gotta click the timer thing, because I don't know what it says. Over here snoring, I'll talk my butt off.
You got plenty of time. Keep going.
So, but as a matter of fact, I'm just sitting here today as inspired. Trying my best not to say any network's name. But anytime any of you, whether you're from Chicago or not, if you turn on the news and Chicago is on the news, that'll probably be something negative. They're going to highlight the 20 to 30 folks who very sadly were shot at or wounded over the weekend. They're going to ignore the other 2.5 million people in Chicago go to work who went and watched the Sox lose 5 over kids are getting paid for it, right? Scout hurt a little bit. There are so many of us doing this type of work. There are people who come to Chicago like Devin because our city is an international, world-class city where not only do you receive amazing hospitality, but you'll be able to check out the arts. You'll be able to see portions of the world. We have more Serbian Americans in Chicago than any other place. We have the second largest demographic of Puerto Rican Americans than any other place. We have the largest urban indigenous Native American community than any other place. And all of that can be found by visiting Chicago. So I wanted to tell those stories on the show. I came up with a title and a beautiful pitch deck, and I've been lucky enough to make connections through my social media channels and the notoriety that gained. So I've even been able to get guests for that show. Packaged it all up, and I took it to a particular network, and the network wants full ownership of the title and the footage and everything else. And I almost caved because whose dream is it, right? You want to be on TV. I want to reach as many people as I can in order to broadcast the goodness of Chicago. Then I started reading the documents that he sent over and how it's possible for me to find crowdsource investors to do it independent and put it on YouTube and let it gain, its own following and traction, and use the network of folks that I've been around to find sponsorships on that side of the world. And then I could take them a proof of concept, right, that already has sponsors, that has already been working, that already has viewership, that already has a need that's not just entertainment, but it's going to do community good. Because what I understand is that if you know the history of a space, you will respect that space. When you have respect for that space, your perspective about that place changes. Then you're willing to do more about that space, more for that space in a very collaborative effort. So again, I'm very honored to be here, and I'm empowered because on the drive back, it's summertime and my wife's gone, and I got to watch my own kids, which is not always the greatest. But I'm going to give that network a call and say, I'm a pass right now, and I'm a crowdsource. And I'm sure there are going to be folks who believe that Chicago and other urban spaces have contributed mightily to this country. On June 19th, I hope you celebrate the fact that America got it right. That's basically what that means. June 19th in 1865, the greatest country on earth went and freed other Americans in Galveston, Texas. Anytime that there's tyranny or something sucky in the world, Americans jump on our horses. We try to go right there wrong, whether it's our business or not. And then June 19th, 1865, it was our business. You happen to be in the city that was responsible for the Illinois 29th Colored Regiment. And those African Americans from Chicago and Springfield and Galesburg happened to be in Galveston, Texas that day to make the to be in the city that first commanding officer, so the first officer of the Civil War was from Chicago. He was a Chicago attorney. One of the first casualties at Pearl Harbor was a Chicagoan, right? We have participated mightily in every major American conflict since there's been in America. In fact, our city, founded by a gentleman by the name of John Baptiste Point Toussaint, set the groundwork for a place called Fort Dearborn. If it wasn't for the military Fort Dearborn during the War of 1812, we'd have lost Detroit. We'd have lost Indiana. We'd have lost other spaces. Fort Dearborn was the line. It protected the Great Lakes. And it was full of Chicagoans. And then today, there's so many activists and organizers. There's a groundswell of community funding happening right now in our city. They're building a hotel in Roseland very, very soon. Spend some time and research Roseland. Then once you do it, you're going to say they're building a hotel there. That's because people in Chicago have shown that if given the opportunity, they can do some amazing things. Whether you're from Chicago or not, you have heard of a place called Inglewood here in Chicago, formerly known as one of the most unsafe neighborhoods in Chicago. Well, that's not the case anymore. The crime rate has pretty much dropped something like 30%. That's because community non-for-profits have partnered with businesses, and that partnership has yielded some amazing things. Philanthropy is starting to trust the community. Formerly, you would get a grant or you do some crowdsourcing, and the person in charge of the money will want to know. You have to call them, send them an email, a text, and a carrier pigeon every time you spent $1. Now, it's not the case. Present a viable plan, they give you the money, they get out the way, they let you work. And doing that has allowed Inglewood to turn itself around. Hope you get a chance to visit a place on 64th and Honor. It's called the Peace Campus. A Chicagoans in the room will tell you that 10 years ago, you wouldn't have drove on 64th and Honor unless you was going to visit your granny or something. Now, in the organization called Imagine Inglewood's If, they own the entire block, provide school trips, and so many other things for people in that neighborhood so that they can activate for themselves. So I'm very honored that you all chose Chicago to have your conference. I think it's an amazing testament to what our city is and what we're going to continue to be. Please leave downtown, go get some Harold's chicken from somewhere. Once you go to Pilsen, you can either go to Luna's or you can go to Ruby's, and you'll have the best tacos you've ever had in your life, even better than anything you've ever had in Texas or California. There is an amazing place called Ming's in Chinatown that sells the best.